Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 268. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn, we do have housekeeping. And all that is in it is a reminder that if you don't want to listen to us talk about not topic-related stuff, then you can check the show's notes to jump to the timestamp wherein we begin talking about the topic at hand. I said it as long as I possibly could have. I wanted to make it short, but it was not.
Yeah, you fucked that up immediately.
My week. I've been playing the video games.
What is that?
I picked up BlazBlue Central Fiction
Oh, yeah?
on Switch. It was on super sale. It was like $20. That one was on sale, and so was the other one, Cross Tag Battle. But Cross Tag Battle has a bunch of DLC that I didn't want to figure out how to traverse, so I just bought Central Fiction because it's the third mainline BlazBlue,
Right.
and it is complete, I believe.
For now.
And to put it in context, I have not played BlazBlue since the very first one that I got on PS3. And I don't even remember why I bought it on PS3 because I didn't know what it was. I'd never played a fighting game like it. I had no idea, and I just bought it, and I loved it.
You hadn't played the Guilty Gear games before that?
I did. Well, no, actually, I hadn't. Actually, since then I've played Guilty Gear.
Right.
But they're also I mean, they're basically it's the same developer,
Right.
but they're separate in the same way that like Marvel versus Capcom is separate from Street Fighter.
Right.
You know. But I picked this one up just wanting to relive my BlazBlue glory days, and I had been avoiding it because I don't do good with over-sexualized characters in video games.
Right.
I don't generally enjoy that, and
It's fair.
fighting games tend to be pretty bad about it.
What?
Not
Not
everyone
Soul
likes to go on
Calibur.
about. Everyone likes to go on about how fighting games used to always be like that, and it's like, no, because I'll play Street Fighter Alpha in front of my kid.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna play Ivy in Soul Calibur 6 in front of my kid.
Yeah.
You know,
Or any Dead or
apparently-
Alive game.
Yeah, or apparently half the characters in BlazBlue Central Fiction.
That's unfortunate.
Some of them are like robots that they made naked. They put skin on robots so that they could look like naked women. I don't even understand
Good.
some of it.
That's how it works.
The original game had a couple of sexualized characters, and it was enough to be like, all right, whatever. You know, there's always bound to be one or two. But the new one, it cranks the number up to at least a good half dozen that you're just like, what the, really? Is that necessary?
Right.
That said, the game is great. I mean, gameplay-wise, it's just a tremendously fun fighter. Highly, highly recommended fighting game. If you like the complexity of maybe other BlazBlues, maybe the Guilty Gear games, some of the more fighters with more complicated systems, then absolutely it's a great game. I've been having a very, very good time with it.
Nice.
Very robust and lengthy story modes with lots and lots and lots of dialogue and cutscenes, and for some reason fighting games I just realized are the only place that I just love lots of story. Which makes no sense.
Yeah, because I always skip that in fighting games.
No, I will explicitly play fighting games just to see a character's story. And that's just about the only genre that I'll do that in.
Nice.
But yeah, it's really good. I've been very much enjoying it. I also picked up on the fighting game front Samurai Showdown 2 on Neo Geo Pocket Color, the re-release on Switch. And also just a great fighting game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always blown away at how good the Neo Geo Pocket Color fighting games are.
Yeah, they're all consistently excellent, especially considering the hardware limitations they had.
Right. And this one is no exception. It also has possibly my favorite multiplayer mode in any Switch game so far, which is that it emulates two versions of the game and splits them down the middle of the screen and faces them towards each Joy-Con. So you
Nice.
hold one end of your Switch and another person holds the other end of your Switch,
Nice.
and you can play two-player like on the same Switch
Nice.
long ways.
That's pretty slick. I wonder if it actually emulates the two separate Neo Geo Pockets that would have had to have been linked together for that.
Yes, it seems
Nice.
to. Absolutely.
Nice.
Now, I believe when you're playing in TV mode, you can just do two controllers and it probably just shows you 2 copies of the game. I'm not
Right.
sure. But the Neo Geo Pocket Color, this is the first of the 3 re-released games that they've done that I've picked up, and it's a really good version.
Nice.
It's got a couple different filters. You can scale it. The initial mode has an entire Neo Geo Pocket Color on your screen,
Right.
and then the game running in the middle of that.
I've seen that
But I held it up to my actual Neo Geo Pocket Color,
one.
and it's pretty close to life size.
Mhm.
So even zoomed all the way out, showing your whole Neo Geo Pocket Color on your Switch screen.
Oh, this is on the
It's-
actual Switch screen, not on the TV.
Yeah, on the actual Switch.
Okay.
Yeah, on the TV, it's gigantic.
Yeah,
I don't have a 60-inch diagonally measured Neo Geo Pocket Color.
No, I just imagined it looking really tiny in the middle of a 60-inch screen.
Oh no. But yeah, so it's on my Switch screen. It's about the same size as my actual Neo Geo Pocket Color.
That's
So
crazy.
you could, I play zoomed in, but you could feasibly play with it that size, and you wouldn't be missing anything compared to the original hardware.
Except for the micro switch D-pad
Right.
analog, whatever it is.
Which, honestly, micro switches aside, the short sticks on the Switch are pretty close
That's
in
true.
feel
Yeah.
to the Neo Geo Pocket Color, although
Right.
it doesn't have that clickiness, which is
true.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
But still a really, really good fighting game. I highly recommend it.
Nice.
I've also finally redone my RetroPie after kind of deciding that mini consoles are the wave of the future, and I want to have 1,000 of those, and that's how I want to enjoy my video games.
Right.
My RetroPie has become largely redundant.
Yeah.
Because having a Genesis Mini and a Super Nintendo Mini and an NES and PlayStation Minis, I have no reason to have any of those games on my RetroPie.
Right.
So what I did is I downloaded a full Final Burn Neo arcade ROM set and spent an entire afternoon editing a bash script that I found on the internet that compares the full 6,000 ROM Final Burn Neo ROM set to the listing of all the compatible ROMs found on GitHub and filters everything down to its parent ROM to remove all duplicate versions.
Which dropped it down to...
About 2,000 games.
Oh, good.
So for people that have never
So that's like a
downloaded
weekend,
full...
right?
Yeah. So for people that have never downloaded a full arcade ROM set, when you do so, you get every version of every game. So you don't just get Street Fighter Alpha 2. You get Street Fighter Alpha 2, Zero 2, the Brazil version, the European version, the Antarctica version, the separate world version, the bootleg, the Phoenix, the Rainbow Edition. And I don't need 12 versions of every game that has ever existed
Right.
in the arcade.
Yeah, you just need Street Fighter 02 Gold. That's the only one you need.
Right. I collapsed them all down into their parent ROMs by doing this.
Right. Which meant that you lost some of the good variations, like Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
I do still technically have it. Well, now, Turbo I still have. All the different types of Street Fighter 2 I have because they weren't parent ROMs. They were separate arcade ROMs.
That must have changed over the years because Turbo used to be a child ROM of Champion Edition.
To be fair, in your defense, I do also have so many Street Fighter 2s still that I might just be confusing myself.
That's fair.
But I do still have the full set in the event that I go, oh, I really want a blank version of blank ROM. I can put it on there. For example, for whatever reason, it gave me Gradius 3, but cut out the first 2 Gradius games.
That's because they're under Nemesis and Vulcan Venture.
I didn't think about that.
Yes.
So, regardless, my RetroPie has now been turned into my arcade machine classic mini console, and it's what I now use it as.
Right.
And it works great. Final Burn Neo works great. I've played it for many hours now and have literally run into one game that did not run.
Which one?
Which is I just hit random and was like play and it didn't run and I was like, well, I don't care, and I deleted it in that moment. But it was I don't know what it is. I'm confident enough to say that I'm good at Linux, but I always struggle to set up RetroPies. I have so many problems and I don't really know why.
That's weird.
But yeah, it is now basically my arcade machine mini console, and it's nice to have that. I've been playing lots and lots and lots of shmups.
So the next time I go to your house, I can just sit there and play Super Kicks on it.
Yes, you can. Over and over.
So in 20 years, when we're allowed to visit other humans in person.
I also have Clacks. I also have all of the hentai versions of Kicks, of which there are a lot.
There's a lot.
I was thinking about modifying that script to also remove hentai games.
Have you ever
or not
played?
even hentai games, just games that reveal naked women.
Have you Have you ever played Volfied?
Yes, I have
Okay.
played Volfive,
All right.
oddly enough.
Yeah, it's just kicks, but every now and then it decides it wants to be a shmup.
Yeah. I also, in the shmup vein, I've just been playing tons of shmups the last couple of weeks. I fired up Crimson Clover World Ignition, which is a game currently
That's
on sale
a
on
long
Steam that I
title.
bought. It is. I bought it forever ago. And in our Discord, someone posted in the Games and Deals channel that we have that we tell each other about sales and said, hey, Crimson Clover World Ignition is on sale for $2. And one of our patrons jumped in and was like, that's my favorite shmup of all time. I love it. And I was like, oh, well, he and I have pretty similar tastes in games, and I own it, but I haven't played much of it. So I sat down and played a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it is very, very good.
Nice.
It's just the gameplay wise, it reminds me, and I know this is kind of horse before the cart situation. It reminds me of Jamestown a lot. Obviously, Jamestown came way later because this was an arcade game that was ported to PC. So I assume Jamestown came later. But normally, I'm not a big fan of shmups that don't have pickups. I really like pickups and power-ups,
Right.
and stuff like that. This one does not have that. It's just one of those like Donpachi style ones, cave shooter thing where it's like you've got these mechanics that you do, but there's no pickups or power-ups or anything. But I still like it anyway. It's just really good. It has what's called a break system. So basically, if you keep killing stuff, you eventually fill a bar and you turn into like Super Saiyan mode, right? Where you're shooting giant beams everywhere. And the longer you're in that mode, the harder the game gets. And at any time, you can exit that mode with a bomb. So whenever the bar gets filled, it also gives you one bomb. And at any point, you can go, this is too hard. I'm going to bomb out of it, be invincible for a couple seconds, and clear the screen. But you lose your break mode, your big super-powered mode. So it's this constant tension building of how long can I stay in break mode to, one, get the highest score, and two, get the most pickups. Because like a lot of bullet hell shmups, it's one of those ones where every time you kill something, 800,000 gold stars come out of it and get sucked into your ship.
Nice.
And it's just so much fun, that tension building of like, how long can I stay in break mode? It's getting too hard. I need to bomb out of it. Or maybe I stayed in it too long and it got too difficult and I didn't hit the button in time and I died. But just super duper fun. Hopefully it's still on sale when this goes up, but it was $1.99 on Steam.
Nice.
And I'm sure whatever its full price is, it's worth that as well. But just a great game.
Nice.
And that's about all I've been up to.
So you were talking about playing some good fighting games. So let me talk about a bad fighting game.
Oh no.
So I was trying to play the Mega Man Zero ZX collection on my Xbox, and I realized that I hadn't actually opened the disc yet. So when I put it in my Xbox, it immediately needed to spend 30 minutes installing.
Right, installing these Game Boy Advance ROMs.
Right, and also updating them, because there's apparently been an update to these Game Boy Advance ROMs. So I had to sit there and wait for all that.
The whole disc has to be like 50 megabytes. It cannot be that big.
It was like a 20-something gigabyte install.
Oh, Jesus, why?
So while I'm waiting for all that to happen, I was like, well, I'm going to look through Game Pass and see what's on there and see if anything strikes my fancy, if I just want to play something. And I was looking through, and there's a couple that I was like, oh, I should check that out. But then I also have to wait for it to install, which defeats the purpose. And so I'm just looking through there, and I'm like, oh, Marvel Capcom Infinite is on Game Pass, and I already have it installed from the disc version, so I can waste some time with that. I wonder why I didn't like this game. I should try it again. And I remembered why I don't like that game.
Because it's bad?
It's not great. It's ugly, first of all. It is hideous. Like, I know there was a lot of jokes before it came out about how bad the characters looked, but it's so much worse in motion. None of the dudes have necks. They just have like this giant musculature that comes out of their shoulders and into their head.
Ugh.
And all the women,
Gears of War neck.
yeah, and all the women are very overly sexualized. So seeing this woman made of perfect spheres right next to weird no-neck dude just felt really off. And then you get to actually play the game, and that's also a problem. Because the gameplay itself isn't terrible. Like it went back to 2-on-2 instead of the 3-on-3 that Marvel Cap 2 and 3 used. So it's a little slower. It also went back to the 2 punches, 2 kicks of Marvel Cap 2. But it took away the partner buttons because you only have one partner now. And I don't remember what the L button did. It lets you use an Infinity Stone like in Marvel Cap 1. So it's pretty simplistic compared to the last couple of games, and it's also slowed down a bit compared to 2 or 3 anyway. But I feel like every character has the opportunity to be incredibly cheap. And if you don't know how to be incredibly cheap in return, you die really quickly. So there's this long story mode that I thought would be fine. I was like, this is what I can play since I'm not going to get good enough at this game to play against other humans.
Right. You're just here for an afternoon.
Right. And so first, the dialogue is so awful and the voice acting is so awful, like really bad. So I'm barely able to deal with this terrible story. And then I get to this fight that's Dante from the Devil May Cry series.
Daint, I'm aware of him.
Daint from Devil May Cry versus Jeddah from Darkstalkers. And you can't choose a different character. It's only a one-on-one fight. You have to play as Dante. And he just juggles me to death within seconds of the battle starting. And it's not fun. And so I turned it off and I did not turn it back on. But I did feel like an idiot while playing it, though, because the first time that I did fight Jeddah, I remembered halfway through the fight, I was like, they did a really good job of putting Jeddah in this game. This is exactly how I would expect Jeddah to play in a one-on-one fighting game. But he hasn't been in a Marvel Cap game before. Why would I know exactly how Jeddah plays in a one-on-one fighting game? Then I remembered he's from Darkstalkers, which is also a one-on-one fighting game.
One-on-one fighting game.
And I'm just an idiot. But no, aside from that, I was trying to play around in Linux the other day. Because somebody had mentioned that Proton for Steam had gotten much better over the years.
Yes, allegedly it has, and has something like 64% compatibility across Steam, and you can run your library through it, and it tells you what all.
Yeah, so the last time that I tried to use Proton at all, I just only used the games that Steam has it coded into. There's a handful of games that if you boot into Linux and open up Steam, it'll just tell you these games are compatible, but it just plays it in the Proton compatibility layer. The developers of those games didn't really touch it at all, which is great, and it works great. But this time, I actually went into the Steam settings menu and turned on Steam Play for any game so that I could install whatever I wanted. And I did it on my gaming laptop. So I booted out of Windows, booted to a Linux Live CD, just so I could play around with it. Installed Steam, installed a couple games. I could not get any of them to start. Like,
oh really?
As soon as I would hit play, it would just blink away and immediately go back to as if no game was loaded. So I don't know if maybe it just doesn't work on a live CD without some more drivers or something. I was going to say, when you're running
a live CD, I imagine it loads minimum stuff.
Right. So I'm guessing maybe the video driver didn't load or something, but I'm not ready to dedicate space from one of my hard drives to a Linux install. So it may still be a thing I put off for a while. Like maybe the next time Windows crashes, I might try it just to see how well it runs and then see if it's something I can move into. But my preliminary tests were not as positive as I had hoped.
I've heard very good things. It had to have been something with your live CD environment, because I've heard
that's my guess.
Yeah.
Because I just used Rufus to make a USB boot disk. Yeah. And then I set aside a Steam library on one of my drives. So it installed it all to that. But maybe it's because it was installing to an NTFS drive. Maybe Linux's NTFS driver is not happy with it. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that Linux has never enjoyed NTFS.
No, it
at
really
any
hasn't.
point.
So so many variables could have affected it. So I don't want to shit on Steam Proton. So it may work great, and someday I'll get back to it.
I'm tempted to throw an extra hard drive in my computer just to play around.
Just to play around.
See.
I hear you.
Let's do some news.
Yes.
First up, leak shows that Killer 7 may be headed to Switch, potentially other consoles as well.
And I haven't found anything that's confirmed this yet. So as of now, it's still a leak. It did come out on Steam either earlier this year or last year. And it was published by Nipponichi America, which is weird. So I would guess that if anybody is going to be porting it, it would probably be them.
Bethesda has made the original Mick Gordon version of the Doom Eternal soundtrack available to download for owners of the collector's edition of the game.
Finally.
Allegedly, it'll be hitting streaming services a little bit later.
Yeah. Isn't that something they were promised before the release of the game, though?
I don't really follow what things Bethesda does and doesn't promise anymore, if I'm being honest. I just
fair.
Ignore it.
Yeah.
But Mick Gordon and his soundtracks are great, and he deserves your attention. So
absolutely.
please, go listen to it.
Definitely.
1998 arcade game Quake Arcade Tournament has been successfully emulated. Finally.
Right? You don't hear too often of late 90s arcade games that are just now being emulated.
True.
So that's good for them.
More EA remasters and possibly Skyward Sword may be coming to Switch, according to Amazon UK leaks. I would love a fixed version of Skyward Sword, but they need to fix more than just the controls, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the EA games, I want to say they had mentioned Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, and I want to say there was something else, but I don't remember off the top of my head what it was. I feel like those are more likely than Skyward Sword. That is my initial take.
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night reaches 1 million units sold.
Good for them.
Yep. And now, does that include, I guess that doesn't include Kickstarter units, right?
I don't know. I don't know if they're including the Kickstarter units or not.
Like, I know it's been wildly successful by its own standards, but 1 million doesn't seem like a lot for the amount of success they seem to be acting like it has. Of course, my expectations for what a successful game is are completely blown out of proportion because game industry.
Yes.
But yeah.
So for that genre, I bet that's probably a really good number.
True. Fan ports Sonic the Hedgehog to SNES runs fine despite lack of blast processing, making all of Sega's marketing suspect.
Now, did you take a look at the any video footage of it or load it on a Super NES emulator? It looks and runs great. Like it
does it?
Yeah, like it's slightly wider than regular Sonic because the Super NES runs at a different ratio or resolution. Right. But the color palette is a little more rich than the Genesis version. There's some nicer colors in the background. But otherwise, it looks just about identical. It sounds very different because the SPC chip on the Super NES is very different than the Genesis sound card. And I think I prefer the Genesis soundtrack on this one a bit. Yeah. But otherwise...
Sonic games in particular, the soundtracks were made for the Genesis sound chip. They do sound great.
Yeah. So I it's a neat thing, and the guy's only done the first level. So actually, I think he only did Act 3 of Green Hill Zone so far.
Yeah.
But still, it's a neat project, and like the physics feel perfect for Sonic. Like
weird.
Like normally, fan games of platformers feel off, and it just feels perfect.
Nintendo Indie World Showcase happened.
I don't remember anything announced. I
feel
feel really bad about that, but I don't.
Spiritfarer, I remember that, and it's already on Steam and Game Pass.
Yeah.
So, Microsoft Flight Simulator becomes highest rated PC game of 2020,
and it's already kind of becoming a meme too.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah. It always gets a lot of acclaim when they release one of these. So good on fans for it.
Yeah, I remember when the last one came out. Everybody was complaining that it could not run on current hardware, and it was basically the crisis of the current era. And it sounds like that may already be the case again with the new version.
Yeah. Professor Abrasive finally announces the price of the Sega Saturn Satiator, which is a basically a flash cart that runs in the expansion slot, so you don't have to replace your CD-ROM drive with something like a Fenrir or a Terra Onion mode.
Right.
At $259, making it the most expensive option in the realm of playing backups, except for,
Burning
No,
discs.
actually, it is the most expensive.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah.
He initially offered a $15 discount for Patreon backers, later revised that he may offer a bigger discount for higher tier backers, but is largely sticking to his guns.
Yeah.
This is one of those weird Patreon situations where his Patreon made it clear that, hey, if you back this project, you're just making it happen sooner.
Right.
But a lot of people who were saying, hey, I've been giving you $10 and $15 a month for 2 years.
Yeah.
I by this time, I've paid for one 3 times over. You know, it seems strange. So I don't want to say a lot because we are on Patreon.
Right.
And we are Patreon creators. So obviously we're biased here. But I will say that when you donate to a Patreon campaign, read what you're getting. Really pay attention and pay attention to what your expectations are, because it's one of those things where it does kind of seem like he should give them a little more, but at the same time, he never technically promised anything more that I can find.
And it's not just Patreon where people will accidentally fall into that trap. It happens a lot on Kickstarter too. Like when there's a really successful Kickstarter release of a game, often when the retail release of that same game comes out, if it has anything slightly different, people will lose their minds and think, well, I kickstarted this. I deserve the absolute definitive version of the product. Well, no, you're trying to donate it to make it exist.
And obviously, this is kind of a different situation from a lot of creators, us included, in that he literally is making a commercial product that he's going to sell, presumably on a web store, and it's that's very different.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to do a Patreon approach for.
And I think maybe Kickstarter would have been better suited to this project than potentially where he could have just. But I mean, I get that at the beginning he didn't know what the units were going to be worth. Either way, I'm excited that it's coming out of the wild.
Yeah.
I'm not excited at that $260 price plus shipping.
Yeah, that's pretty steep.
GeForce Now available on Chromebooks.
You know what's hilarious about this is that NVIDIA is doing a huge marketing push too, where they're getting retailers to put giant GeForce signs above the Chromebooks to show that the Chromebooks can play GeForce Now games.
But what about Stadia, Saturn?
Google has never done that with Stadia. You would think that Google might have thought of that at some point.
You think it'd be a selling point for Chromebooks that a lot of tech journalists and critics are kind of wondering why they even still exist.
Yeah, well, they exist for schools.
True. That's about it.
Yeah, but like if you go to the Stadia website, it's like, oh, and buy this Chromebook to play Stadia on. But the one they recommend is the Pixel Chromebook that's like $900.
Yeah, and at that point, you could just buy a laptop and play games locally.
Yep, and get them on Steam sales.
Rocksteady also facing charges of sexual harassment. There's also been some secondary fallout about how they've handled and responded to it. And some people being upset that people are upset.
It's a mess.
It's unfortunate. All Oculus headsets will require Facebook logins by the end of 2022, and new owners will need Facebook accounts this October. If I'm being honest, I own an Oculus, and I could not find a way around the Facebook login, so they already have been sort of soft enforcing that.
Yeah,
apparently there is some way, but
they said that on the current accounts, you only need it for social things, apparently.
It did not imply that when I set mine up, but I'm also habitually dumb. So, EA Play subscription service coming to Steam on August 31st. EA also pushing a large amount of updates to many of their Steam titles, featuring trading cards and other Steam-specific amenities. Cool.
I wonder if this is a soft wind down of the Origin service, because they did rename it from Origin Play to EA Play.
E3's Twitter account offered a list of the top 25 games women play and quickly retracted the list when it included lots of games like Candy Crush.
Yeah.
It was, the whole thing was bad.
Yeah, they did apologize.
True. Sega says they'll aggressively focus on PC ports after strong Steam sales last quarters, doubling down on what they said previously in that they were going to continue pursuing it. But now it is going to be aggressive.
Now they're going to be aggressive about it.
Assets released from canceled Capcom games Ghouls and Ghosts and Timeless that ended
It's
development.
Ghost and Ghouls.
Pardon me, Ghosts and Ghouls.
Yeah.
That ended development sometime in 2017.
Yeah. And I don't know if you looked at it, but this new like gritty reboot of Ghouls and Ghosts,
Oof.
it looked like hyper realistic, and I don't know if I would have quite dug on that. I mean, maybe they could have made it work, but I can understand why it might have ended up in the cancellation pile.
Yeah. Nintendo reopening Brazilian offices will be releasing the Switch officially in that region soon.
And they pulled out of Brazil in 2015, and they said at the time it was because of rampant piracy.
All right, then.
So hopefully that situation...
They just can't compete with the Sega Master System in Brazil.
Exactly.
It's still the juggernaut of that territory. 5 new games are coming to Dreamcast this year. So someone said in the Discord there's more Dreamcast games coming out this year than there are first-party Switch games.
And the list of those games was pretty... I will say that none of them were marketed towards me. They look very late 90s arcadey. You got some arcade game or some arcade style racers, and I think there was like a Gauntlet-esque brawler.
Mm-hmm. You're just naming things that sound fun to me now.
Oh, you should check it out then.
Firewatch movie in development. This is one of those games that's just, I see it all the time and I have no idea what it's even about whatsoever.
I have not picked it up.
For some reason in my head, I assume it's about firemen. And I don't think it is about firemen.
I've been told it's close to a walking simulator, which is why I did not pick it up.
Oh, boy. Contra, Super Cobra, Gradius 2, and Super Dodgeball coming to arcade archives for Switch.
Nice.
Demon's Soul, Demon's... It says Demon's Souls, but I think it's Demon's Souls.
I believe so, yes.
Plural, maybe possessive, I don't even know, but a remake is rated for PS5 in Korea and Japan, so that's exciting.
Nice. And
then finally, GB Studio 2.0 beta released, which is a great piece of software to build Game Boy games in. It's so easy that even I could do it. And I only quit after several hours. So that's pretty good for me.
How much game did you make in several hours?
I made enough game to build your house full of a hidden stash of Coke Zero machines in your basement.
Excellent.
And I put in dialogue where you talk incessantly about Dragon Quest.
Just like in real life.
Yes, it's the Retro Warriors RPG.
I have spent days in RPG Maker and not even made a map, so that seems like a pretty good progress for a couple hours.
Yeah, potential release pending 2047. I'm gonna say that. That's our current TBA.
Perfect.
So we'll see. But without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand. This week we're talking Kirby Super Star, aka Kirby Fun Pack.
Yes.
Which is, for basic synopsis, it's what if instead of one Kirby game, you got 8 Kirby games? I mean, most of them are the same. It's kind of the same game. They just split it up, and some of them are mini games. But there's 8 of them, Saturn.
It's totally 8.
It's not Action 52, but it's close.
It's not just one game split up a lot. It's 8 different games, totally.
Definitely 8 full-sized games, asterisk.
I'd just like to say real quick, I love the European name of Kirby Fun Pack. And I kind of wish we'd gotten that.
It does at least better imply what kind of game it is.
Right? It's a pack of fun.
As far as listener feedback, we had David Cavallari write in who says, I made the mistake of buying my son Kirby Superstar a few years ago as part of the anniversary collection for the Wii, and I have regretted it ever since. He plays so much goddamn Kirby that I want to punch that little pink fucker. As cute as he is, and as easy as it is to pick up and play, I still want to punch that asshole. I might need some anger management counseling. You may, David. Ragar Starkong writes in, I've never really been a fan of Kirby. I mean, on paper, a sentient blob of cotton candy with extremely impressive lung power sounds rad. However, Kirby Superstar came out when I was in high school, and my then girlfriend was obsessed with Kirby. I bought her Superstar for Christmas. So did her parents. So did her grandparents. Both sets. It was ridiculous. We spent most of Christmas break playing it, and I must admit that I did have fun with it, especially the racing game with the food.
Nice.
As far as first encounters, my first and only Kirby game for years was Dream Course.
Which is how most of the series plays.
Yeah, it's basically all just Dream Course, and then every now and then it's a platformer.
Right.
I thought Kirby was just a mini golf character for years. We had a Super Nintendo, but we owned no JRPGs. The only Kirby game we had was Dream Course. The only Mega Man game we had was the first Mega Man X.
That's something.
We didn't have Yoshi's Island. We played Maximum Carnage and Kirby's Dream Course. That's what our Super Nintendo did.
It's a weird lineup.
Even our NES lineup was weird.
I always loved that back in the day too. Going to other people's houses and seeing what weird games they had, and like there was the staples that almost everybody had, like Zelda and Mario and whatever.
Yeah.
But then you'd get to somebody's house and they'd be like, "Well, I only have Contra 3, D-Force, and Rise of the Robots."
We had one game that took a Super Scope. We never owned a Super Scope. But we didn't get rid of the game. We got it for Christmas. And like once a month, I would put the game in and try to see if I could figure out how to play it with a gamepad. Like I was going to fucking trick it to not work with a Super Scope.
Yeah, totally. That's how it works.
And you know what? It never worked one time. I think my most played Super Nintendo games were probably Mega Man X, Super Mario World, and Mario Paint.
Well, based on the rest of your library, I can understand that.
Played a lot of Wizard of Oz as well.
Oh, why?
I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't even like Wizard of Oz at all. Kind of scared me.
Yeah.
And the game was bad and poorly put together and presented poorly and looked and played bad. I can't explain myself. I was young.
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't until many years later that I started exploring other Kirby games.
Right.
And I habitually passed Kirby Super Star by because I would look at it and go, "Oh, it's just a bunch of dumb mini games. It's not a real game." And I would shove off to Kirby's Dream Land 3 or whatever. And never really played this one. I had a friend a while back that was like, "Oh man, you got to do Kirby Super Star. It's the best Kirby game." And I was like, "The fucking dumb mini game compilation? No, thank you. I have an iPhone for my dumb mini game compilations. I don't need your Kirby game."
Yeah.
And that was it. That was my
That's
experience.
unfortunate. Yeah, for me, so I think I mentioned on our Kirby episode like 4 years ago, whenever that was, that my first taste of Kirby ever was emulating.
Tasted him?
Yeah, I tasted. He tastes like cotton candy.
Perfect. That was rolled in dirt.
Yeah. But the first Kirby game I played was Kirby's Adventure on an NES emulator on Windows 95.
Oof.
So, and I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with it. Like, I remember when I had downloaded them, because I just downloaded a whole bunch of NES games. And this was back when each NES game would take half an hour to download because it was dial-up. So I would, download. I would be online for like 6 hours, and I would make sure I always had one downloading. And I had gotten through all the like mainstream NES games that I knew, and I was like, well, let's go with the other ones I've heard of.
Let's get weird,
so that I can see if there's anything worthwhile. And I grabbed
the World Watcher.
No,
Low G Man.
no. So I grabbed Kirby because I was like, well, he at least ends up on magazine covers for some reason, but it's clearly a kid's game, and I won't want that because it's stupid.
Right.
And I played it and just absolutely loved it. Just thought it was amazing. So I took my $18 that I had saved up, and I went up to Funko Land, and I got Kirby's Dream Land on Game Boy, and I got home and I finished it half an hour later, and was like, well, that was underwhelming. So,
oh boy,
I was like, well, maybe there's just that one good Kirby game. But then I saw Superstar at the rental store a year or so later, and I was like, well, I'll try this one out. This is Kirby's last chance, and just absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite games on the Super NES, and also one of the hardest games to emulate perfectly on the Super NES, to the point where even the Wii Virtual Console fucks it up a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Does the Switch version fuck up?
No, it seems perfect, which I'm very happy with. The Super NES Classic is not perfect.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Can I put the perfect version on it and make it do it?
No idea.
Now I'm upset.
No idea.
Now I'm upset that a game that I hadn't played before doesn't run perfectly on my classic console. Why'd you have to say that?
Here's the thing: it's just the intro video that plays wrong.
I'm upset still. It's wrong.
And
I'm gonna throw the whole thing in the
what
trash.
what bugs me about it is because I popped it in my actual Super NES just to make sure I wasn't remembering it wrong all these years. So in the intro video, it shows Kirby riding on a little star, and then he bursts into the logo at the end. And right when he bursts into the logo, there's like a loud splash in the music to like correlate with him bursting into the logo.
Right.
And if you play it on the Super NES Classic or the Wii Virtual Console or just about any Super NES emulator, maybe BSNES probably does it right, but most other Super NES emulators in their standard settings, he'll end up landing in the title screen like a good 4 or 5 seconds after the music's already ended.
Weird.
Yeah. It's something with however they rendered that title screen was really sophisticated for the Super NES.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about the development of Kirby Super Star.
So it was originally in development for the NES.
Oh man, that would not have fit.
Yeah, many years before. And apparently a feature complete version was made for NES. It wasn't the same as the Super NES game. They obviously changed up the what games were involved and everything. But it was feature complete supposedly before they decided to move it to the Super NES. And this version was never even known about. Nobody knew there was an NES version of the game until Kirby's 25th anniversary concert in April 2017, and Hal showed footage of it, including some like sprite sheets and stuff that looked really impressive for NES games.
Yeah.
And during development of the Super NES version, there's not a ton of recorded data. I could not find any interviews with Sakurai or Iwata about the development of the game at all, despite the fact they both heavily worked on it. But during development, there were at one point plans to make a horror themed game in the package that was intended to be called Heat Haze Mansion, in which Kirby would have roamed about an empty mansion guided by candlelight that could give him the fire ability whenever he needed it. But they never actually put any work into coding it before they finished it. But aside from that,
9 games is just too many.
Yeah, that's too many. You can't have 9.
Many. That's ridiculous.
The DS version
you have
has
9,
10.
you gotta have 10.
The DS version has 10.
Does it?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
I was right. If you have 9, you have to have 10. As far as gameplay goes, it's still a basic platformer like other Kirby games. Kirby can jump, slide, and inflate himself to float over enemies and hazards. It does expand on the copy ability that he gained in Kirby's Adventure on NES, which sounds weird to phrase it that way, but at this point, it wasn't fully established that was in air quotes like main Kirby.
Yeah, I think this was the third game with the copy ability after Dreamland 2.
Yeah, because we had Dreamland 1 and 2. Was Dream Course before this? We had Dream Course.
Yes.
We had NES Kirby.
We had Avalanche.
And I don't know when... Do what?
We had Avalanche already at this point.
Avalanche, yeah. We also had Kirby Pinball. We had, we had so many different kinds of Kirby games that at this point it wasn't necessarily taken for granted that Kirby would eat an enemy and copy their ability.
Right.
It was not a solidified thing yet.
Right.
Kirby can also create allies by sacrificing his copy ability. You can also revert your ally back into the ability for Kirby to use if Kirby doesn't have another copy ability. Right. A second player can control the ally but can't scroll the screen or interact with doors, which makes it kind of weird, but it's not too bad for, multiplayer.
It's about as useful. It's significantly more useful than the second player that just collects star bits in Mario Galaxy.
Yeah, true. And like we said, it's 8 games.
Ish.
So Saturn, do you want to step us through the 8 games contained within Kirby Super
Star?
The
8 games-ish.
That are totally separate games.
Totally
with nothing
not the
to do
same
with
game.
one another.
So first you have Spring Breeze, which is just a simplified retelling of Kirby's Dreamland, minus the Castle Lololo stage for some reason, but the Lololo and La 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 bosses are now in the Float Island stage. So, whatever. It does include all the new gameplay mechanics that you find in the other games in this package, which makes it so much easier than even the super easy Game Boy game that it is emulating.
Spring Breeze is so easy and short that it's almost kind of a joke that it's there. Like, it's cute because it's, you know, a redo of Kirby's Dream Land.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just you're done with it in like 3 minutes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you're like,
It's
oh,
super
okay.
fast. Then you have Dynablade, which is kind of your warm-up game. It does have an overworld map, and a couple of the stages have secret exits, which lead you to like bonus rooms, essentially. That way you can get powers whenever you want before you go to the next level.
Right.
And then you finish the game by fighting this mechanized bird, and then stealing its children and feeding them.
Yeah, and we were playing this online via voice chat,
Yeah.
and at some point the phrase "Kirby will kill your mother and raise you" came up
Yeah.
as like something you might say to your children to get them to do their chores or something.
I don't
If you're not
know.
careful, little Timmy, Kirby will kill your mother and raise you. All right.
The ending of Dynablade is very strange, and it doesn't make sense. We'll just say that. And then you have Revenge of Meta Knight, which is also the introduction of Meta Knight as a character in the Kirby franchise.
Oh yeah, I guess it is.
And it unlocks by completing either Dynablade or Great Cave Offensive, which we'll get to in a moment. It's very similar to the other games, except for every stage has a time limit. There's also occasionally on-screen dialogue between Meta Knight and his crew, which...
Not even occasionally. It's a good amount.
Yeah, it's a lot of dialogue. It gets pretty wordy sometimes, especially at the beginnings and ends of levels, but there are also points and mid-points of levels where it triggers more dialogue.
This one's also cool, too, because you're on Meta Knight's ship,
Yep.
like slowly
The halberd.
dismantling it
Yep.
as time goes on. I really liked Revenge of Meta Knight.
Yeah.
It's a good difficulty level.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's got lots of characters. It's got lots of dialogue, and the boss is. I had a really hard time with the boss.
There's a couple bosses in Meta Knight that are pretty tough.
Yeah.
And then after that, you have Milky Way Wishes, which is the big game. You have to have completed all the other main games to unlock it. You cannot copy enemies' abilities in Milky Way Wishes. You have to find a Copy Essence Deluxe somewhere in the world. And once you have found it and touched it, then you have that copy ability permanently. You can just go to your pause screen, go to a menu, and select whatever ability you want. And
Mega Man style.
yeah, pretty much. And then once you've selected that ability, you can then make an ally with that ability, and then select a different ability if you so choose. So it's a much bigger game than the others. There's a lot more levels. There's a lot more backtracking to go try to find those copy abilities. And you can, however, find there's an ability called Copy. And if you get the Copy Essence Deluxe statue for the copy ability, you can use that to copy enemies' abilities. But
then once you copy with copy ability, it doesn't add them to your arsenal.
No.
You've still got to go find the essence.
Exactly. But that one ends with a shmup boss, which is really neat. So that's really the bulk of the game. And then the other bulk of the game is the Great Cave Offensive, which is this massive cave map with interconnecting areas. There's no overworld or anything. You just go openly between these areas. There are 60 treasures located throughout this map. Some of them are just basic gold coins or chalices. Others are cameos from other Nintendo games like Samus's Screw Attack or a Phanto or a Koopa Shell or Marth's Sword from Fire Emblem or a Mr. Saturn from Earthbound. And the treasures aren't required to finish the game, but you do get ranked based on the value of the treasures you found. And if you didn't find them all, Kirby looks sad at the end, and that means you
don't
to
want
replay
that.
But you can go back and forth throughout that game. You can go back to areas you've already been and collect everything. It's not difficult. It's just a little more time consuming because it's a much larger map. I've heard people say that it is the Metroidvania of the Kirby universe. I
can see that kind of. Like if you're really wanting to push it into there, then yeah.
But you don't need specific. Well, you do need abilities to get certain places, but you can just copy that enemy, and it'll always be nearby. And then the last of what the game considers the main games is the Gourmet Race, which is the last one that still controls like a normal Kirby game. However, there are no copy abilities or partners. It's just a race. You just race against King Dedede to grab the most food and get to the end fastest.
You did it! And this one doesn't unlock anything, does it?
No. You I don't believe it unlocks anything anyway.
And really, I would kind of call that one a mini game too.
Me
but
too.
we're about to talk about the more mini game like mini games.
Right. So first you have Megaton Punch, which is just a timing game where the two players or player and a computer opponent will time button presses against a couple of gauges in order to split the entire planet in half. And then you have
Dragon Ball Z style.
Right, pretty much. And then you have Samurai Kirby, which is based loosely on the NES game Wild Gunman, but without zapper support. And it's just a timed reaction. Like, it'll tell you fire, and then you hit the button, and you slash your opponent. And it'll show you exactly how many milliseconds the winning player took to hit the button. And that mini game was also on Kirby's Adventure as well, as one that you could find randomly throughout the world. And then there's also a bonus mini game that you get for finishing Milky Way wishes, which is the Arena, which is just a boss gauntlet. And it is way harder than fighting the bosses in the main game because there's less chances to heal or get good power-ups. But beating that'll unlock a sound test, and that's your last thing.
And that's the game. And at first glance, like when you first boot it up, it really does kind of gate off a lot of the content. And feed it. I don't want to say drip feed because that makes it imply that it goes a little slow. I mean, you really start unlocking stuff fast.
Yeah, I mean, once you finish Spring Breeze, you already see something unlock.
Right. And I mean, really, even if you play through everything in the entire game, it's probably
a couple days worth, maybe. Like,
yeah, I mean, we're talking
like maybe 8 hours of gameplay, 8 to 10 hours, if that.
Yeah, like if you're really digging in around that time.
Yeah.
So it's not massive by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a lot more massive than it seems when you first boot it up.
Right.
And like Kirby games that offer the copy ability, the real star of the show is kind of the copy ability.
Yeah, especially because you can make little helpers out of each copy ability. And
right. So it kind of doubles the like a lot with Kirby games, specifically copy ability Kirby games. So much of the enjoyment is seeing the new costume and the new animation and the new abilities, but this is almost double that because, like you said, you've got your helper,
right,
which is even more animations, and sometimes their abilities are slightly different from Kirby's version of the ability.
Also, this was the first Kirby game where Kirby's appearance changed when he had a copy ability. Prior to this, he would just look like Kirby still.
Yeah. And we're not going to list every single ability in the game because there is a surprising amount.
Yes.
It's not like, I mean, there's probably, 20, 25?
30 something, if I remember right.
Holy crap. But we are just going to kind of jump through some of our favorites.
My favorites are absolutely Mirror, Plasma, and Ninja. I will go out of my way to get those.
I really like the Cutter, which turns into Sir Kibble, and you get the boomerangs. Those are really good.
Yeah.
I really all the sword ones. I like just regular sword Kirby.
I used to love Jet Kirby for some reason, but going back to the game, I have a really hard time controlling Jet Kirby, so I don't know if I would choose that as a favorite anymore.
I like Wheel Kirby, although I'm bad at him.
Take some practice.
I just like getting to zoom back and forth, and I think the little wheelie character is cute too.
Yeah.
Ninja was fun. I played a little bit of Ninja with you, which was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
I also really like the stone.
Yeah.
Because whenever you turn into the stone version, you turn into different little statues.
Right.
Which are just it's super cute.
Yeah.
The amount of
there's a Mario statue you can turn into.
Yeah. The amount of cute animations and homages to other Nintendo properties that exist within the animations of the not just the game but also the helpers and stuff. It's just really fun.
And all of the helpers are enemies that you can encounter with that ability, just turned ally. And so it's really nice to have them on your side all of a sudden. I think my favorite helper is for the parasol. You get a Waddle Dee with a parasol, and his name is just Parasol Waddle Dee. and I feel so bad for him because he didn't even get a fucking name. That I constantly will summon him just to let him have some time in my party.
I also really like Wing Kirby. I've never, for whatever reason, I've never very well adjusted to the float mechanic in Kirby games. And the wing just lets you flap wings and fly like the way that my thumb wants to expect a character to fly, which makes the game easier for me by a pretty good margin. Let's talk bosses. Wispy Woods, you've got the big old tree.
Right.
It's sad. It's a tree. It drops apples.
Yeah. It goes down really quickly.
You have Lololo and La La La,
who are straight from the Eggerland series, and they even have their little emerald blocks that they push in the original Adventures of Lolo games, which is
you
nice.
have Kracko, which is the big thundercloud.
Right.
You have King DDD, Dynablade, Fatty Whale.
Yeah, it's just a big old fat whale that'll splash at you and throw rocks at you.
You have Computer Virus, which is a JRPG fight.
I love this one. I love this one so much. So you just have, like, you walk into an arena, and then all of a sudden, out of the background, these giant menu boxes appear, and like it'll show one of 5 enemies: a slime, a puppet, a mage, a knight, or a dragon. You only ever fight 3 at a time, I think. But depending on how difficult the area you are it'll have different ones, and then it'll have a text box to say that they do an attack, and then like if it says like they shoot a star attack, then stars will fly out of their sprite at you, and you have to dodge them. And if you dodge them, it says it missed. But if you get hit, it'll be like, and Kirby took X number damage. And then they will drop out of their menu box and just land on the screen and do nothing while you just wail on them. And then when they go back up, it'll say Kirby and his friends did X damage to the boss. And there's a little menu box that shows how much hit points it has left. So you know how many times you have to keep hitting it till it dies. And it's just the most adorable fucking thing.
You have Gamelio Arm.
Yeah, which is a chameleon.
Wham Bam Rock.
It's mildly offensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have Heavy Lobster, which is it's a lobster.
It's a robot. It's a robot shaped vaguely like a lobster.
You have Twin Woods, which is what you call it when you have 2 Wispy Woods.
That's true.
Combo Cannon, which is a laser beam.
Which sucks. That is my least favorite boss in Meta Knight.
Yeah, it's not fun. Halberd's Reactor, which is a green diamond that powers Meta Knight's ship.
Yep.
And that goes straight into Meta Knight himself.
Yep.
You have Heart of Nova, which is, like you mentioned, the shmup sequence boss that you get to fight. And then you have Marks, which is the weird, creepy jester demon monster thing.
Yeah, and when you first...
That creeps me out.
Yeah, when you first meet him, he is your ally, or at least they try to make you think that. And then a Kirby game pulls a trick on you and gives you a plot twist and makes him turn evil, which you know, fortunately, I was old enough that I could handle that. But I have to think, that's pretty mean to little kids playing Kirby games.
I'm a grown man, and it feels a little mean to me, if I'm being honest. As far as graphics and sound, it's a very good-looking Super Nintendo game with a really great, large, colorful sprites that are very distinct.
Oh, yeah.
And the enemy variety is the real visual meat and potatoes here. There are so many different enemies with so many different animations and things they do, and you can eat them and gain their power and then fart them out and they make a friend. And it just looks great.
Yeah, and the little there's a lot of little mundane animations like enemies getting hurt or Kirby getting hurt or something, and just their little disgustingly adorable reactions really sell everything.
The soundtrack was composed by Jun Ishikawa, which is HAL Laboratories' in-house composer. And it's really jazzy and upbeat. And what I like the most about it is it has this great sense of tension and drama that kind of intensifies how silly Kirby is in this really melodramatic way.
And a lot of the soundtrack from this game has been heavily reused in other games in the series. A lot of the tracks that are like iconic Kirby tracks mostly originated from this game or from Dreamland.
Right. It's very much sonically has been the defining Kirby game.
Yeah.
As far as reception, it sold over 1 million copies in Japan, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Had very favorable reviews across the board. Famitsu awarded the game a 32 out of 40. GamePro gave it a 5 out of 5. Nintendo Power gave it a 9 out of 10. EGM gave the game second place in its side-scrolling game of the year award.
Now,
with Guardian Heroes taking first, which it seems
fair.
weird to even compare those two games at all.
Right?
It'd be like, which game do you like better, Gran Turismo 4 or Resident Evil 6? Which one do you like? I don't know how to answer that.
And also, they're on very different platforms. That's a Super NES game versus a Saturn game.
Right. In 2008, Kirby Super Star Ultra hit 9th best-selling game of all platforms in Japan.
Nice.
And was the 5th best-selling DS game in the USA.
Nice.
The DS release did receive slightly lower scores in general, but I mean just like 1 point lower, barely lower scores. Yeah. And as far as legacy and recommendations, it was very influential game in the series, as we talked about. Introduced tons of mini games and copy abilities that would become standard and almost expected moving forward. And obviously lots of music from Superstar would also appear in later Kirby games and in Smash Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny because when we talked about Smash Brothers previously, you would say to me, well, I just consider Smash Brothers a Kirby game.
Right.
And that never made any fucking sense to me at all. It'd be like if I was like, oh yeah, I just consider Resident Evil 6 a Gran Turismo game. It doesn't make... I was like, what is he even talking about?
Right.
I've played Dream Course. I played Dreamland 3. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But when I play this, in a weird way, it feels like a proto Smash Brothers thing.
Because it is. According to some of the people at HAL, many of the elements of Smash Brothers are based on Kirby Superstar, including the fall-through platforms and the simple directional inputs for attacks, mid-air jumps, guarding with the little bubble shield. All this stuff, they said, they basically just took from Superstar and applied to a fighting game environment.
It's got lots of mini games.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a terrible menu. It has so much in common.
Yeah.
With Kirby Superstar. I wouldn't even say that Smash Brothers feels like a Kirby game. I'd say Smash Brothers feels like the sequel to Kirby Superstar.
Kind of.
I mean, very much. Like, you really get that feel when you're playing it.
Right.
This was the first game where Kirby's appearance would change based on his abilities, which, as you mentioned, adds so much charm to the game.
Oh, yeah. Just his little stupid hat that he has for the beam ability is worth everything.
Yeah. And as we briefly mentioned, Kirby Superstar received a complete remake on the DS under the new name Kirby Superstar Ultra.
Yeah.
Which featured 1 new main game, 2 new mini games, and 3 new game modes. Graphics were upgraded, and new enemies and bosses appear in the new game modes. I have not played Kirby Superstar Ultra.
So I just started playing it. It was one that I completely somehow ignored when it came out and bought several years later, and then never touched the actual cartridge. So I loaded it onto my 2DS the other day, and it plays nearly identically to the original. I couldn't tell much difference in the actual gameplay. Graphically, it looks quite a bit better. The animations have a lot more frames. It looks like they might be higher resolution. Everything looks like it's been redrawn a bit to look just a little bit nicer. But it's still very much the same game at heart. So if you've never played it, that's not a bad version to play.
Right. As far as final thoughts, Kirby Superstar is, for some reason, and we talked about this before the show, a game that I enjoy playing.
Yeah.
But I don't really go out of my way to play it.
Right.
It's very fun. It's very charming. It has a lot to offer, and I don't know why I don't love it. Like when we played it, I had a very enjoyable time.
Yeah.
I have favorite parts of it. I love the animation. I love the gameplay. It's solid. It plays great. It looks great. It sounds great. And then whenever I turn it off, I'm like, well, what's next? Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what else I've got going on. That said, I'm not a huge Kirby fan to begin with.
Right.
Most of the Kirby games I like are the weird spin-offs. I like Dream Course. I like Kirby's Pinball. Air Ride's okay.
No, it's not. You take that back.
So that said, it's a great game.
Yeah.
If you like Kirby games, this is the one to play.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is the most Kirby game that I've played ever.
Yeah.
And if you're a Smash Brothers fan that just really wants to see like the bones of Smash Brothers and where it came from, this is very much that foundation.
Oh, yeah.
Very obviously.
Yeah.
In a way that I really didn't expect.
Right.
And I'm glad that your ridiculous statement finally makes sense to me now.
That's good.
Because before I was like, Saturn's an insane person.
For me, I understand how you feel, because I get that way with a lot of the newer Kirby games. Anytime I play them, like I'd played through Planet Robobot on 3DS
Right.
and Star Allies on Switch. And like when I'm actively playing them, I'm like, this is a good game and I'm enjoying myself, and there is nothing wrong with this game in any way. And the second I turn it off, I'm like, I don't need to go back to that anytime soon. I don't need to
Right.
finish it. I don't need to see where that goes. I have had my enjoyment and I will move on, which is a shame because they're all well-built games. And the more I think about it, the more I think maybe it's because I'm still chasing that Superstar Dragon. Because every time that I start a Kirby game, I'm like, oh, this is good. And all this is mechanically functional, but it's not Kirby Superstar.
It's not super. It just needs that bad menu design that they took from Kirby Superstar and put in Smash Brothers. I think that's Nintendo's secret.
That's the secret
They're games
sauce.
with really bad menus.
Yeah,
The best ones.
I will still go back to Superstar though. Of any of the Kirby games, if I'm going to intentionally replay one, it will almost always be Superstar or Adventure.
I'll say this: enough of the mainline Kirby games feel similar enough that I don't want to say they're interchangeable, but some of them feel kind of interchangeable. You know, because you've got like Nightmare in Dreamland, you've got Return to Dreamland, you've got Dreamland 1 through 3, you've got the NES Kirby game. Like a lot of them,
Nightmare in Dreamland is Adventure.
Yeah, and so it's this thing where if I want to play a Kirby game, I'll tell you right now, when I get that wild hair and I'm like, I want Kirby in my life right now,
Right.
I'm going to be going back to Kirby Superstar.
Yeah, it's really good.
I didn't find it inherently more compelling than other Kirby games, but I found it inherently better and more well-crafted and with much more variety and
Also feels
charm.
a bit more polished than some of the later Kirby games.
It really does, yeah, for sure.
Like some of the later games feel like they want to throw in some extra gimmicks here and there, whereas Superstar feels like it shows you all of its possible gimmicks in the first few moments. It's like these are
Right.
all the tools, and you have all of them, and just go play a game now.
Yeah, go have fun. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel the need to gate you off anywhere
Right.
or make you be made of yarn.
Yeah, like in Triple Deluxe on 3DS, I remember that was I think that was the one anyway that had like the super inhale, where you could like breathe in the entire fucking screen at once.
Yeah.
And there would just be these arbitrary points where you absolutely had to do that or you could not continue. And you would just get up to this wall and it would be like, now do this one move.
Well, it'd be like, now do the gimmick.
Yeah.
Do this game's gimmick now.
Exactly.
Dance monkey, do the thing we
Right.
said. Like,
And it just kind of breaks the flow of the game itself. And Superstar never seems to have that. Because it's all
there's
just
moments in Superstar where they really want you to have a certain ability
Sure.
to get through a certain area.
Yeah.
But because so much of the game is built around that, it doesn't feel like a dancing monkey, here's the gimmick
Right.
from this game situation. It just feels natural.
And there are some points where like certain paths are blocked off. Like you have to have fire ability to use a cannon or a hammer to push down a post or something. But those are all clearly optional areas. And it's not
and they
gonna stop
generally
you
put
from
one of
playing
those
the game.
enemies literally on the same screen.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think Kirby Superstar might be the best Kirby game I've played, except for maybe Dream Course, of course.
Naturally.
Also, Rainbow Curse. Was it called?
The
it
Wii
just-
U one?
Yeah, the Wii U one. That one was great, but really kind of not a Kirby game.
Not
Just
really
a game
a
they
Kirby
put
game.
Kirby in
Yeah.
because you're drawing a little rainbow thing on your
Right.
screen, and that's it. Canvas Curse.
Canvas
that's what I'm
Curse, that's the
thinking
one,
of.
yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. If you are like me and you've played a bunch of Kirby games and been like, nah, they're fun, but I want like the quintessential Kirby experience, it's this one.
Yeah.
For sure. Most definitely. Or if you just really like hamsters, there's always Dreamland 3, I guess.
Oh god. That was such a disappointment after Superstar.
I could say. I always wonder why people they don't shit on it, but people are like, "Yeah, Dreamland 3's not that good." And I played that before this, and I was like, "It's fine. It's a fun game."
Yeah.
Now that I've played this, I'm like, "Oh, I get it." Yeah. It'd be like if the next Smash Brothers was like, "Well, there's only 12 characters, and it's just 1v1, and that's it, and there's no items."
Right. Yeah, and
be like, "Yeah, that's a fine game, I guess, but look what you did before."
yeah, and it was the same with Kirby 64. Like there were some neat new abilities and everything, but I was like, you're on an N64. This is a much more powerful hardware. How are you still making games worse than Kirby Superstar?
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, that's Kirby Superstar. You should go play it. It's on Nintendo Switch Online. It's remade on DS. Yeah. It's available on Super Nintendo, and I don't think it's crazy expensive yet.
It used to be. I don't know if it still is.
Did it used to be?
Yeah.
So, well, if it is, get it on Nintendo Switch Online.
Right.
Because that version works great. Online works great. And according to Saturn, it's emulated perfectly.
Yeah. As perfectly as I've noticed, anyway.
Right. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to help the show, you can go to patreon.com/retrowarriors and you can give us your money.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want to give us your money, you just want to give us your opinion, then you can come chat with us in Discord or rate and review us on your podcast aggregator of choice. And there should be links to the Discord link and the Patreon link in the show's description. If there's not, then I'd say come yell at me about it, but you don't have a link to the Discord to yell at me about it. So just yell at your phone.
Yeah.
And just know that
just yell into the void.
It's in the world now. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.